Yeah, I think we're good to go, man.
You ready? All right.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What is up, guys? We are back with episode 1 of the Loaded Dice podcast, official first episode. So, if you guys popped into my stream at all, I mentioned we had some pretty big plans for the second episode. I don't know if you guys noticed, but we're live.
We're
in
here.
person.
We're
Yeah,
here.
We're here. We're here. So, I had a couple people reaching out, being like, "Hey, maybe I could pop on the next episode, be a guest." Unless you're out here with us, I don't know. I don't know if we could make it happen.
Yep, we're doing the world's first, to our knowledge, Runeterra streamer meetup. We're blowing the doors down, and this is how we're going to be running it from here on out. So
Yeah, changing the games. I thought I heard that Sqweeby was in my area, so I thought this would be a great idea to really just kind of kick off the end of the pandemic, really, towards the end. So, we're both vaxxed up and we're ready to just do some big things, you know what I mean?
yeah, Fan was looking on he was looking at Mobalytics and he saw an ad on the side that said we have Masters misplayers in your area ready to meet now.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's how we linked up. So
Exactly.
yeah, it feels great, honestly, and I think we could dive right in. It'll be a new feeling, guys. It's cool to be in person, and I can't wait for when meetups start happening more consistently. We're playing at game shops, or hopefully Worlds will be in person, stuff like that. So.
Exactly. I think the first live Runeterra event is going to be a real game changer and really exciting for sure. So
Yep.
I thought it'd be sick if we could be the ones that kind of kick us off and get us into that space.
So yeah, we hope you guys enjoy it. Thank you so much for the response on our last episode, the pilot episode. It went over really well, and we're just excited to continue to bring you guys, our thoughts in these talks, and have this sort of dialogue with you. It's so nice. So we haven't seen each other in a minute, and not much has changed since we last talked, but
yeah, as far as the meta and things of that nature, any news from Riot, we're kind of in the same place as we were in the last episode, but that doesn't mean we don't have stuff to cover, stuff to talk about. So to lead off, Sqweeby, how has your ladder experience been since the last time we talked? Thoughts on everything, just if a week changed your mind on anything, and just, what you've been feeling and what you've been playing.
Yeah, Azir Aurelia still super strong. Like, I'm feeling it
Shocker?
on ladder.
Yeah. Hot take.
I have been. I dropped to 0 LP. I think like a week ago, down from 300. It was a bit of a rough fall, but I've climbed back to around 200, and I was having a ton of success with Shyvana, Aesol, one of Zoe Dragons.
Yeah.
Like, it's the deck I'm most comfortable on, so that could also be part of it. But it's what I used to get Masters, a version of it with Garen earlier in the season. And then I think it kind of fell off. Like, it felt like with triple Homecoming and Azir Aurelia and stuff, it was just getting run over, even with Radiance. But now, I don't know. I went 2-2 on it into stream. I think I went 9-2 overall to climb back up. But it felt, against everything else, it felt super strong. So I don't know exactly what has changed. There's not a lot of... I didn't run into much TLC at all on ladder. Yeah. So I think that's still kind of being kept in check. But I was expecting to get run over with it, and I was the one driving the semi-truck.
Glad to hear it, man.
For my opponents.
Yeah. So with that being said, what I would speculate on and think that what has changed to kind of make that what it is like you mentioned, kind of TLC being one of the crux of that deck and really like kind of, holding it back a little bit. So, we know Azir is still just as strong as it was before. Maybe, that's arguable exactly the power level, but that is one thing holding back TLC, as well as Thrall's coming out of nowhere and just being like a real other crux to that deck. So I think if you're going to pinpoint one thing that would make Dragons a little bit better right now, is there's 2 decks now that are kind of have TLC a little bit at bay, and Dragons is pretty consistent in my mind and pretty consistent into most matchups. So I see that
there's a lot of other aggro on the ladder too right
Absolutely.
now. So
there's always just the slew of 40 different aggro decks, and I think that Dragons is like consistent enough against them all because they have like combat removal and stuff like that. So it's not like the same situation with TLC where they might get punished. Well, not TLC, but maybe like Thralls as a better example. They get punished if their AoE can't remove boards.
Yeah.
Where it's like a little different on that Targon side of things.
Yep. 100%. How's your ladder been recently?
So my ladder has been quite a roller coaster of an experience. I have this trend I've been doing. It does not matter what LP I'm at. Every stream I start up, I'm starting at 200. I'm starting at 100, 250 LP. I will lose every game all the way down to 0 LP.
Damn.
This is how the past streams have gone every time. So I'll start stream. I will lose down to 0 LP. I'll be switching off, kind of figuring what I'm going to be playing. I find something, I'll win a couple of games, right? All of a sudden, I'm literally going 13-1.
Yep.
15-1, like insane win rates from 0. I'll climb back to that 200 threshold, end stream, start the whole cycle again the next time. So some of the decks I've been playing that did get me these runs and, get me these good win rates after the free falls that I've been having. I'm known to be a little bit more of a off meta gamer, so these are going to be definitely in that vein.
Yep.
Is most recently Vi Draven. That's the deck I used to get Masters. It's 3 copies of Give It All, a lot of Overwhelm. It's pretty spicy.
It's a big brain deck too. I've played it a bit on stream, and it's like it can be pretty taxing.
It could definitely be, for sure. You got to kind of like, I think the biggest thing with that deck is knowing matchups and knowing like, all right, this is gonna be my win con. This is what I need, because a lot of the matchups I feel like there's like, okay, this is the thing that's gonna work. Everything else is just gonna get fried. So yeah, I had a ton of success. I made a climb of like 200 LP the other day. I don't remember the exact win rate on it. And then before then, I had another stream. I think I tweeted about this. I went like 13-4 or something like that.
Dang.
Maybe better with LeBlanc Sivir list. I was tuned a little bit in particular to counter some of the higher play rate stuff, such as Thresh Gnosis. We're running like 3 copies of Reckoning, because Reckoning really
it demolishes.
Obviously if they have right, they have right. But outside of Gnosis, nothing is really existing over 5 attack. And, Sivir, and we're on 3 copies of Rune Runner is pretty huge, because just Spell Shield is like, what are they going to do? What are they going to do?
A good keyword.
Yeah, it's a good keyword for sure. So that, and then this one felt like, okay, maybe this was a fluke for sure. I think it wasn't entirely a fluke, but I had a really good win rate with a Teemo Fizz version where I was running PNZ Allegiance, and I was actually frying some people with that. I kind of like stumbled upon a little bit of creation synergy that made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It was like, one, Ballistic Bot and the Android. Ballistic Bot, he scales, we all know, he scales
Amazing.
like crazy. So you play that Allegiance card, give him the elusive, and that elusive map that's created obviously buffs him himself.
Yeah.
And I'm on 3 copies of the creation spell, so I can like create copies of that guy and just kind of spam.
Yep. Iterative.
Yeah, just spam iterative, spam a bunch of big 4/3, 5/4 elusives.
Nice.
It's pretty clean. So I've been messing around with like a lot of, again, off meta stuff, but yeah, it's been a roller coaster for sure. I feel like that's kind of the way the meta's been boiling lately.
I feel like, is any of the reason that you've climbed, and maybe that I've climbed too, due to the glitch that we saw in game where Masters players were playing gold and silver players?
Yeah. So if you guys didn't know, there was, for a period of time, I don't know exactly how long this lasted, there was a glitch where Masters players were queuing into the gold, platinum, lower ranked players. This is not something that's supposed to happen. I heard of a couple people literally gaining hundreds of LP.
No way.
Yeah. I think Lover of Pies, if you guys know him, is one of the biggest exploiters of this mechanic. So he's
out.
Yeah, he's where I heard of it first, and I'm shameless. I was like, shit, well, let me hop on, right? I queue in. First thing I get is like one of the top Masters Azir Aurelia players, and I was like, okay, maybe they fixed it. Maybe I'm unlucky, but I'm not getting to take advantage of this. I'll just call it a day. But yeah, I think it was a super funny glitch to happen, and I think a lot of gold players got something coming. They were not ready. They were not ready at all.
Yeah, they saw the skill gap
Yeah,
of
they
what
saw
the
it.
yeah
They
they
saw it right away.
maybe it was motivating for them though. Maybe that was the intention behind it. Just
Yeah,
let
give them
them
that
see what
fire,
the goal is exactly, and then they can aspire to it and reach for it more.
or maybe humble some of those Masters players if they
Yeah,
if they got taken down.
yeah.
Yeah,
And we saw another glitch too that was less funny, but I hope they have it fixed by the time you guys see this. I mean, they definitely will. But Gauntlet players weren't able to see if they qualified for seasonals via Last Chance Gauntlet for a period of time that we've been in. So that's a bit unfortunate. Usually it takes about, I think, like 3 or so hours last time
yeah,
to be able to qualify for it. If you're in the first 3 hours, at least from last seasonal, you would have qualified. So, but yeah, that was
yeah.
interesting to see that happen as well.
Again, something that I'm sure they'll resolve and it'll all get straightened out. But yeah, unfortunate to see at the time when you're really just trying to see if you
Yeah,
made that cut or not.
Yeah.
It's a little frustrating.
I love the Gauntlet gamers.
Yeah, they're a try hard bunch for sure. They're very ride or die gauntlets.
Yeah,
I got a lot of them coming through. I've only played one gauntlet so far in my career.
oh, the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I don't really mess with the gauntlets. I mean, I know I'm gonna qual through ranked,
Yep.
so I don't really put too much emphasis into, but there's a lot of people that come through like, yo, gauntlet's opening up. You jumping on gauntlet?
Yeah.
It's an
There are
exciting
a lot of people
space.
on mine too that say the same thing.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I'm like, no, guys, I have to play ladder. I have to play ladder. Yeah, but kind of tied to that, we do have seasonal coming up, and we are going into it with the current meta. There's not going to be a big balance patch or shift before we go into seasonal, so we kind of know where everything stands in the landscape right now. So we could talk a little bit about just like some general tips for what to think about when crafting a lineup if you qualify, and some of the strategy sort of behind that as well.
Yeah. So with that, I would think, the first couple things you got to keep in mind when you're building a lineup is, first question, are you going to ban a Zerarelia? And then kind of cater around that.
Yep.
And then you kind of narrow in on what specific decks you want to target and what you think you'll see the most of. For example, Gnosis Thresh is going to be the first thing that comes to mind if you're banning that deck. Also, I would recommend for most people, because you could obviously do the lineup where you're targeting a Zerarelia and kind of hone in on that. But with a deck that's as explosive as that one, I feel like a lot of the times targeting that type of deck could be to your detriment. Could be really bad in the sense that a lot of times counter decks, you'll win most of the time, but they definitely have the explosive power to, just nut draw, kill you on turn 4, and you'll be tweeting about it if it happens. So personally, I think it's better safe than sorry. Go the route of banning it and kind of
I would
your lineup
agree.
around
Like
that.
in the past, I think hard targeting is just really hard to do, because
I
if
agree.
if it doesn't go your way, if your opponent's deck that you're targeting, gets a good draw and they're able to cheat out a win with it, then you're playing those decks into their remaining deck, which like you aren't prepared for in the same way if they're playing strong meta decks, and then it's going to be, you're in a position, a huge disadvantage playing, like here I would say triple aggro is probably the best counter to a Zerarelia.
Yeah.
But if it
leaves you
gets
wide
the draw,
open.
it leaves you wide open to a lot of healing, a lot of control decks that you would expect to see potentially, TLC and dragons and things like that.
And the other deck that I feel always shows up at seasonals, Ezdraven.
Yeah,
People always bring out the Ezdraven, and aggro can definitely have some problems with that.
it can.
Too.
Yeah. But like you were saying, a Zerarelia, if it gets the right draw,
Exactly.
like, there maybe is no deck that can beat it. Like,
I agree.
So trying to build your whole lineup around countering that is, you may run into some problems, especially in the later rounds. Just like triple aggro in general, I think it can be very hard to consistently win enough games, especially in those later stages where you're playing more experienced players who have a ton of experience playing into aggro, or often maybe playing later game, decks as well. It could be a tough time, but I think soft countering Thresh Nasus is something I would be a big fan of right
Definitely.
now.
Yeah.
And I have I was looking at, shout out to Drissoth on Twitter, great player, great stats collector, and Drissoth has some good lineups here to counter Thresh Nasus. Just as an example, TLC, Overwhelm, Zoe Vi. Pretty flexible lineup. Pretty
Yeah.
strong decks in general.
Exactly.
Um,
TLC is something that definitely doesn't like pigeonhole you into like, oh, I'm teching for aggro, I'm teching for this, whatever. TLC, obviously, we all know, kind of destroys other control decks. We all are aware of that. So you're able to really cover control matchups, cover aggro, have that matchup into Thresh Gnosis, which is going to be huge. And you're not really like narrowing yourself out of like other matchups, which is kind of the biggest thing in this type of format. And then, like you said, Zoe Vi, right?
yeah.
It's another flexible deck with a lot of like, you can go into the late game with your star shapings and things like that. And you can still like hold down in mid game and other matchups. So
You have Vi too to kind of counter
exactly.
them dropping the Thresh, and you can even tech in. Ruben has been playing a Sunburst, a one of as well on ladder that is so good. Like I was it can deal with Thresh, it can deal with Nasus.
Yeah, the
so
silence
strong.
is huge there for sure. If you just stop them from getting leveled, that Gnosis is toast for sure.
Yeah. And then with that sort of lineup, you definitely would need to be banning Azir Aurelia. I think most lineups, it's probably smart to be banning that deck.
Even if you don't think you have to, you'll regret it if you don't.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
And bringing it, if you're half decent on it, also probably a good move, because people who think they can hard target it, you're probably going to get some wins out of that as
exactly. If you're serious about your placement and your approach to the seasonal, I think taking some time to play that deck, ain't no shame in your game. Just get some practice on it. Most of the time, you're probably not going to end up playing it anyways. But if you can be a threat on that deck, I think it's huge in that type of format.
Yep. And if you don't have a ton of time to practice new decks, or you're just unsure of what to play, one of the best bets is just play the 3 best decks. If you have experience on them, it would be like a TLC, Thresh Nasus, Azir Aurelia, or whatever other deck you're comfortable on. But playing decks that you're comfortable on and are strong decks is going to get you decent results most of the time.
Comfort definitely comes through there for sure, because you don't know what you're going to see, for example. So a lot of times, if you don't have the knowledge in a matchup, that could send you downhill. And just having that comfort and knowledge across the board in the different regions and matchups is huge for sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, and just like kind of if you want to craft your own, just be thinking about decks that they're strong into the same things and they're weak into the same things. And that makes your ban more straightforward of what your decks are all weak into, and leaves the rest of the field, generally you'll be even or, slightly favored into it with your lineup. But picking decks, the problem with the 3 best decks would be just like, TLC and Thresh Nasus are not weak into the same things, that sort of thing. So, but it's still, put some thought into it, and you have some options this seasonal, but we should all be expecting to see a bunch of Thresh Nasus, TLC, and Azir Aurelia. That is definitely, without a doubt.
Definitely.
What else we got? Oh yeah, so 2.11 is what everybody's got their sights on.
Exactly.
That's what we're waiting for.
Everybody's
Krog.
waiting. Yeah. It's gonna be a do or die type of feeling when we see that patch. I already know the anxiety going through all of our hearts, through our minds, when we click that link to see that patch is gonna be huge. So I'm excited for it. But Sqweeby, what are you expecting to see?
I definitely would like to see. We'll just get the elephant out of the room. I think Azir needs to be a 1/4. A lot of people have said that, but I think in conjunction with that, I also think that Aurelia's Blade Surge needs to get reworked in some way. It either needs to cost 1 mana, or you can only create like one of them a turn, maybe, or something like that.
Yeah.
Either of those, you don't need to do both, but I think either of those changes, just
some type of cap would be huge. I think either 1 mana, like you said, just when they're able to get 3 or 4 Blade Surges, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah,
like,
especially with the elusives too. It's...
Exactly. Like, even if you have answers, they can rotate on you like 10 or 15 times, and they're gonna get you. So I think that is a little bit of a problem. I completely agree, and I think them touching upon that and making some change would be pretty huge, pretty healthy.
I would like to see List too. She has seen 2 8-cost units summoned. We've talked about this before, but so she's on the board for a turn. She's at least you have a chance to interact and remove her before they get that that Watcher out. So I think that would be a fair change. And Threshnasus, I'm not exactly sure how I would want to see it changed. Like,
what I've been hearing a lot of people proposing for that deck is a change to Butcher. I don't know if you agree with that, either through stats or whatever. Butcher is kind of one of the cards that kind of makes everything flow for sure. So making that a little less powerful, I think, would be pretty big. I think they had the right idea when they did make the change to Caretaker, but the problem with that is we all know they kind of threw in another 3-drop that just made sense to slot in.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like the deck misses Caretaker at all.
Exactly. It doesn't, because Merciless Hunter, I feel like, is still providing a very similar role in, you're able to challenge, grant vulnerable, and you could even use it to, proc some slays and do some things like that. So I think it doesn't miss it at all. So hitting one of the engines that's a little less replaceable, like, again, something like Butcher, which is what flows into all the turn 2 40 damage attacks and things like that, I think would be a pretty good call, personally.
Yeah, it's kind of like sort of similar to the problem with the nerfs that they did to Azir Aurelia, in that the cards that they nerfed were very cuttable. Yeah, and not super central to the way that deck, why that deck is so powerful. And they don't want to, at least they've said this up until now, they don't want to, kill the Blade Dance mechanic, but it's that coupled with the backline engines of, Darius and Azir.
Absolutely.
That make it such a strong deck. So, yeah, the same thing with Caretaker, right? It's like it wasn't fully necessary or wasn't why that deck was overtuned.
Even when it was at its strongest state, I definitely think this might have been the wrong call in a lot of situations, but I would see some people not even run it then. Like, some people would either be on less copies or just not running it at all. Because there's so many different options and things you can slot in. So I think, just them honing in on what's actually important win cons and strategies for the deck and kind of honing in on those areas, I think is going to be the most important thing for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But other than that, I would like to see some buffs, man, like across the board.
Buffs across the board.
Bilgewater needs it.
Yeah. Bilgewater, exactly. That's exactly where I was going to go. Bilgewater is in a state where I feel like they definitely need some stuff. The one thing that we don't know going into it that will kind of influence this a lot, though, is we have not gotten our Bilgewater champion. They are going to be getting a champion with some cards in addition. But I still think no matter what they're introducing, obviously if they introduce something super insane, that won't be the case. But I think they'd still probably need some buffs across some of the key cards, because the power level disparity between Bilgewater and the other regions right now is super felt and just super big. Super big for sure.
Buff TF?
Buff TF? Buff TF? I don't know. I don't know if we need to go that route with it. But
Loaded Dice?
Loaded Dice.
Our podcast card should be buffed.
They should buff it.
They should buff it.
Yeah, absolutely. Buff the card, add us to the card art, plug our Twitches.
That's it.
That's all they need. Just change the card text to add our Twitches and we're good, I think. And then Bilge will be running the meta.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that... I mean... Ionia a little bit, right? A lot of the cards in Ionia.
A little bit. I think if they hit Azir Aurelia hard I'm hoping obviously that they don't completely kill the deck and they make it healthy and they're able to balance in that way. But if you take that deck out of the formula, the region's going back to how it was, in my opinion.
Yep.
It's not very strong. A card that a lot of people had a lot of hope for, Syncopation, I think was very underwhelming in play.
I thought I rated it a 5. I was wrong.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be at least good, but it doesn't even feel playable in most decks outside of certain, like, maybe all-in strategies. But yeah, the region does need some love. It needs some kind of focusing in. It's cool that they did get a deck that was, not just playable, but the top of the meta. But they still have a lot of the same problems that they had before, so I think them kind of tuning that up would be huge.
For sure. Yeah, they have an open canvas to do a lot. They've got the new cards coming out.
Absolutely.
They've said they want to do more than what they've done in the most recent patches. So, yeah, it's interesting to see that if it goes well, I think the game it's going to feel like new all over again.
Absolutely.
And I don't think it'll go very poorly. I don't think they'll make that same mistake given community response from the last one.
I agree. I think that at the very least, we're going to have some good patches for like the next couple months. You know what I mean? If anything happens after that, It'll be seen when it happens, but for now, I think they heard our voices and they're going to be looking to make some changes that are going to make us all happy.
Yep. So yeah, we're looking forward to that. And I wanted to just touch on with you, Filthy Gamer Weeb. I don't know if you've been following his run in Fight Night. He won his third Fight Night out of the 4 that he's appeared in, I think consecutively, and he's brought TF Fizz like each time and is crushing with the deck. And I was watching his interview with Casanova, or just listening back to it, and Casanova was like, I refuse to believe that TF Fizz isn't tier 1. I think that's maybe going a bit far, but maybe 1.5. But like, the deck just, it seems to be performing so well still, but no one is really playing it. Like,
yeah. So with that, my opinion on it is I think TF Fizz is just a very consistent deck.
Yeah.
You have so much draw and just so much elusive win cons and, burn. You have so many different avenues that you're going at once with the draw that just helps it all become consistent. So you're able to cover a lot. And then I think it also shines more in a tournament format for sure.
That's what I was going to say.
I think there's not that many like super bad matchups. You know what I mean? So if you could single out the couple matchups that are like super horrible for you or whatever that would give you some problems, you could really turn the tables and go in your favor. And that also applies to ladder with, if you're covering most of the decks, if you get a decent enough Q luck, you should be like winning a lot of the times.
It's a deck too that can pull out just like those miracle wins.
Absolutely.
With the right draws, and with all the draws, it makes those miracle wins, they happen more consistently than a lot of other decks that only have one nut draw, and they have to get it naturally.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Mind Meld is like just such a good card. And
absolutely. And that goes back to also what I was talking about. Just the amount of draw you have, you're able to find that win con way more consistently than any other deck would. Because there's be so many decks where you run that big card that could win you this matchup or whatever, and you just can't find it. But the difference in this scenario is stress testing, rummage, TF blue card, TF one leveled, zap if you're running pick a card. Your chances of finding that win con, especially if you know you need it, is going to be through the roof. So I think, that deck for sure.
Loaded dice endorsement. Bring TF Fizz to seasonals.
That's
if you know how to play
exactly what I was thinking.
You maybe do well with it. Yeah.
If you know how to play it, and you need to know, again, that banning strategy, if you can know exactly how you're going to capitalize on TF Fizz, you're going to do well. It was not Filthy Gamer Weave, I believe, but in the last seasonal, Floppy Mudkip, right?
Yep.
Made it to top cut.
4 with it.
Yeah, top cut with the TF Fizz. So, I mean, it's showing then. We all know the meta hasn't really shifted a ton from that point outside of Azir Aurelia. So, it's still going to be just as strong then. That's already post-nerfs where Floppy Mudkip was able to kind of spotlight the deck. So, I think with all this data that we have and what we've seen, it's clearly underrated for sure.
Yep. Yeah, and we both have, you have a history with it for sure.
Definitely have a history.
I played it a good bit as well, and it's a super fun deck. I like how flexible it is, so I might be testing it out and, messing with it before the tournament.
Same here. Yeah, same here. Absolutely. Everybody knows I'm a sucker for elusives. If you guys
and Fizz
if you guys check my YouTube feed, which is where this video is going to be placed, you'll see a lot of elusives. I'll tell you that right now.
And then we've covered pretty much all that's happened so far in terms of our thoughts and what to look forward to. Again, there haven't been big changes, but everybody's kind of looking forward, and we've got the seasonal to look forward to and prep for. But we've got a little drama. We've got a little card game drama, Fate.
I'm about the drama.
I wanted to get your thoughts on what's happening. You wanna run it down from the Twitterverse?
Yes, sir. Let me pull this up if you want to fluff the
time
for a second.
So we've also got, there's not much to say about it, but there was a League of Legends anime that was announced, and they put out a trailer. The trailer doesn't say much. It's a 2-minute trailer, but the animation style looks beautiful, and obviously they've got the whole big universe to tap into. So everybody seems to be pretty excited for that, and that might have some potential to bring in new players as well. I mean, maybe anime lovers who don't play League of Legends already. I don't know if there's like one of those out there.
Yeah,
But
agreed. One thing I think with that also will be cool for players like me that haven't really jumped into the League verse going into this game. I think it'll be cool to kind of like have something to kind of pick up on the lore. I know there's a lot of people excited in my chat talking about lore and these different relations between the different characters and stuff like that. So having a way to kind of like watch and get in tune with some of that, I think is going to be pretty cool for those types of players for sure. And just kind of bridge the gap between some of the different League verse games, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But yeah, so what we are alluding to is just a little bit before we started to film this podcast, we saw a certain tweet from Mogwai. I'm sure you guys all know Mogwai. So I'm going to go ahead and read this tweet, and just had a couple thoughts that we wanted to go through based on what we're talking about. So the tweet says, so according to quite a few voices in social media, Reddit, Twitch chat, and my own Discord even, I'm the one to blame for the overall attitude of the community towards the meta and the state of lore. This blatant insecurity and pettiness that I'm seeing as of late is off-putting. Initial thoughts?
It's super unfortunate that people are making him feel that way. Like, it's absolutely not one singular person's fault for any of this. And he's one of the most prominent voices in the community, and he tends to be very positive and optimistic from what I've seen of his content.
Yeah.
So like voicing frustrations and stuff on Twitter is everyone's right. We're all players. We all got frustrated. I actually thought his original post where he talked about the state of the game and, you know, the power level, the inconsistencies in the balance patches and stuff like that was really well thought out and written. And I think a lot of people just overreacted to his statements and maybe had, you know, glorified him or just put him in a really high up position and then weren't happy with what he was saying. But yeah, people can take it too far on the internet, man. I guess it's nothing new,
agree.
But
as his level and how big he is, I'm sure that is one of the cases and one of the things that's happening here. But at the end of the day, he is one of the loudest voices in the community. So I think he is just unfairly singled out as like a target a lot of the times, where people kind of like, one, don't really give respect to his takes because of the type of content he does, which I think is unfair a lot of the time, as if he didn't have a history in card games. And, you know, when I first started playing the game, he was entering tournaments and was competing as well. So we know he does have knowledge in that aspect. And for these people to kind of like single that out and go for him in particular, I think is unfair and unwarranted. But I also think one of the question that arose in my mind from this is not Mogwai in particular, but we all know all the largest voices in the game are very vocal about how they feel about the meta and how they feel about, you know, the state we're in. So I was wondering, do we think if all these voices were a little bit more quiet, these lower ranked players, these players that are more for fun gamers, would they really still be feeling exactly how they feel, or would it be more of the same? Because a lot of the times I feel like in those lower ranks like gold and silver, you're playing a lot of off meta stuff anyways, and whatever tier 1 deck there is at the time, if those people are abusing it in those formats, in those places, you're probably losing just as often, in my opinion. So it's funny to see the outcry across all the different regions. So it's like, is it fabricated? Would they notice these specific play patterns being as much of a problem? Or is it more just piggybacking on this and being like, yeah, I do lose to this deck. I don't like this deck because I lose to it. Because I think from our perspective as Masters players, it's not just that the deck is overtuned. It's the way the play pattern feels and the way it's like interacting. So it's like, would these people notice? Would it be healthier to maybe have some type of direct line to Riot in a way, almost to kind of voice our opinions? Maybe have like some things I was thinking like a council or something where Riot could refer to a subset of top players that could kind of organize and voice those opinions to the developers.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. Like, part of the reason you're going to lose games in lower ranks is because you're not playing optimally, but also your opponents aren't playing optimally, so you're going to win games because of that as well. But I was like, I saw Emotional, shout out, great content creator. He tweeted on Twitter that like he was playing a Smurf in gold, and he was losing like a not insignificant number of games to a Azir Aurelia when they were misplaying, but just because of the draws. They were like, they had all of the tools they needed. So it's tough to say. It might be a little of both, right? Of like the deck is super strong, and in lower ranks, if you're not playing optimally, or you're playing, maybe not the most meta of decks, you're going to be losing to them more than you would if it wasn't existent in the meta. But there are also, on the other side, there always is a top meta deck. There always are 2 to 3 of the best decks, and people are going to net deck them because they want to climb, and that makes sense. So if it wasn't this, it would be something else that was getting on all of our nerves, right?
Yeah. So thinking about it right now, honestly talking about it, I did think of some other thoughts, and it makes sense if I kind of go back. I don't know if it's this deliberate, but I feel like a lot of times in the game's history, control decks have kind of been at the top many of the times. Mm-hmm. And I think in a way that's almost healthier for the lower game players, because I think control decks can be misplayed. They give you a lot more opportunities to misplay in those types of lower ranks, and that's why they try to avoid aggro decks being more more busted at that rank, because a lot of times you can autopilot an aggro deck and you can still, you're just going face, so you can get there without playing optimally, without really thinking too far ahead, and that becomes a toxic environment for those lower ranked players. And that's kind of like the Azir Aurelia deck in a way is like a pseudo aggro deck, just because of the way that it's so explosive. So it has that same capability where you can be misplaying it. You could kind of just throw out the cards, and it doesn't really matter as much, as well as like so many of the different win cons being so interchangeable in the sense that you could have Sparring Student, Dais, Blade Dance, you could have Green Glade, Azir, you could have, so many different combinations. So things like mulligans aren't as punishing with that deck, in my opinion. So it creates more of a toxic environment down in the lower ranks.
Yeah, we can address this in another video. Like, there's been a debate about like what's more skill intensive, aggro or control. There's obviously a lot of skill that goes into aggro decks, and you can master them and take them to the next level. But I do agree that like they have tended more towards control decks, because you have to prolong the game that long, right? Like you're not winning on turn 3 or 4, and so you have
it's
to.
It's just more opportunities to.
You
more
have
decisions to make.
Yep, and it's on a lot of it. I know there's a meme about like passing back and forth, just auto pass, but the decisions that go into the passes, and then like when you have to use the tools that you have, did you use it too soon? Like that back and forth is so fun. But if it's always, if the top decks are just winning by turn 3 or 4 all the time, it does feel super stifling to mid-range and control and a lot of the field out there. So I get that perspective. But yeah, if we catch any of you guys bullying Mogwai online, you're gonna get a stern talking to from us. All right,
talking to from him, hands from me. We cannot stand for it.
Yeah.
I think it's also important when we think about this, if you guys care about the community and care about the growth of the game, big content creators are very important to the livelihood and the ecosystem. So taking it easy on them isn't a bad thing. We need these players to really promote and help push the game a lot of the times.
And they're playing it the most oftentimes. So they're going to get fed up and be passionate about it, more than the average player might notice it. But with that, I think we're good. That might conclude the first in-person Runeterra podcast, possibly world's first Runeterra meetup. Fane, thanks so much for coming through, dog. This was super fun.
It was a lot of fun.
And
many more in the future.
Yeah. Oh, and I'll plug right now, I'm hosting a $500 tournament July 10th and 11th. It's open to all players on America's Shard. It's free entry, $500 prize pool. I'll be putting more out about that, but I hope to see you guys playing in that.
Definitely recommend you guys jump on that. Again, free entry. So if you've ever considered kind of delving into competitive at all, free opportunity to give it a shot and just have some fun.
Oh yeah. All right, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Loaded Dice signing off.
Peace out.
Yeah, buddy.
Cool.